People are always very puzzled because what they have been seeing is a great rusty heap of iron and steel. But what they're looking at is one of the most extraordinary examples of Victorian engineering of the 19th century and unique so far as Oxford is concerned, because it was a specially operated bridge which enabled the London and North Western Railway Company to bring their trains into a terminus at Oxford. It was designed by Robert Stephenson, great Victorian engineer, son of George Stephenson, who had the first steam passenger locomotive, the Rocket. And he was experimenting with the use of steel. Up to that time, cast iron was the main material used for civil engineering. And also, he was experimenting with the idea of movable bridges. And the construction of the movable bridge here solved a real problem for the London and North Western Railway, which was how to allow canal traffic still to reach the Thames, but also to allow the railway traffic to come to the Oxford terminus and associated goods yards. The canal predated the railways and was originally built in order to bring coal down to Oxford. At the time, just before the Swingbridge, the Oxford Canal was the main source of bringing coal down from the Midlands and then via the Thames to London. And the Sheepwash Channel, which is what the Swingbridge crosses over, was the crucial link between the canal and the river. It took about 5–10 minutes to actually move it, so it was quite a long operation, quite a lot of manpower required. They would have been men, of course, in those days. 2 to each windlass on either side of the bridge. As soon as the bridge was closed, which was in 1984, 1985, it was hoped that the bridge would be preserved and properly restored. But it wasn't until about 2002 that the Oxford Preservation Trust became involved with it and took it on as a major project, rather different from its other projects because it's such a unique feature of industrial archaeology and industrial history in Oxford. But then the problem was to raise a really large sum of money to actually carry out the work. And it was really quite complicated because the whole thing had in effect to be virtually almost dismantled and stripped back to the original metal, taken out the original, and the deck of the bridge has had to be completely replaced because that had virtually rusted away. There is still work that needs to be done on the bridge, particularly to restore the 2 fixed ends of the bridge, abutments as they're called. And that was the mechanism which allowed the engineers to lock the bridge in the correct position to align with the tracks, but also to raise the bridge up when it was closed, raise it up so that the gearing would not be damaged by the weight of locomotives passing over the top. The bridge really still works. The first time it was moved since 1984 was right at the beginning of the restoration project. And at that time, for reasons which I've never quite understood, it was still classified as part of the operational railway. And so we weren't allowed to try and move it until the middle of the night when no trains were operating, which seems completely barking. Anyway, in the middle of the night, in the March of the work started, the bridge was moved for the first time and it worked perfectly well. It showed that Robert Stephenson's mechanism from 1851 was still absolutely in perfect condition, even though the bridge had been idle for 20 years or so. We don't move it though because we're concerned that until we get the 2 abutments at either end repaired and that mechanism, we're just a little bit worried that it might get stuck. And if it got stuck, we would be in big trouble because we would be blocking the river and it would be very difficult to move it. Under normal circumstances, you can't get right up to the bridge, but it's surrounded by open fencing all the way around, so it's very easy to see. If you're walking from the centre of Oxford to the Thames towpath, you see it. And if you're on the Chiltern Line train to London, you get a really good view from the train coming into platform 1. Well, what I've got in my hand is one of the original windlasses that operated the bridge, and there's quite a story behind this. When the bridge was last used, the railwaymen, I suppose, to sort of, well, not exactly celebrate, but to mark the last use of the bridge, chucked the 4 windlasses in the river. And we knew they were there, and we wondered how on earth we were going to try and find them. And we were fortunate to persuade an archaeological student, Tom Davis, who was interested in magnet fishing, to come out with his magnet. He put his magnet in the water and, much to our total surprise, found two of the windlasses almost straight away. So this is one of the original, well, possibly not the original windlass, but certainly the ones that were used the last time the bridge was operated.